depth of intellect adds color and texture to every professional organization. She brings a ho-hum outfit to the next level. She does, with her state-of-the-art ideas. She always has. Her smile and her positive attitude add sparkle to every situation. And she adds warmth, comfort, in all kinds of ways. So Linda, I think I just love you so much, and I think that I speak for my Somers colleagues, Paula, Pam, Catherine, and Grace, who retired last year. But I bet I speak for all these people, and I say, thank goodness you'll be working part-time next year.
I can't tell you how touched I am. I always thought that I was wearing these scarves because they hid a crepey neck. But thank you so much for your kind words. And I just want to say that Tamara, you said it all. You said it all. Listening to you, Tamara, it did bring back reasons why I became a library media specialist, and it wasn't because I always knew that it was that I would do this. I knew that I would be a teacher. I had grown up in Newton, Massachusetts, and Newton, Mass, amazing school district, and we were the training ground for Harvard's Graduate School of Education, particularly for social studies education. So as a little kid, beginning in kindergarten, I benefited from that kind of teaching. So my goal was to be a social studies teacher. And like John, I did that. In my first position, however, I think that I had an inkling about my future career. I was teaching in Meriden, Connecticut. I had all seniors. I was only 3 years older than my students. I was teaching one of my 5 preps was a course in contemporary issues. It is late 60s. Media is just becoming a word in the dictionary. And I decided that there was no resources. And I decided that one of the books that my students would read would be Marshall McLuhan's "The Media is the Message." So, in this book, so I bought it. My social studies chair said, "Oh, I don't know the book." I said, "You'll love it." So, got the book. It had to be approved. There was an image in the book of a woman playing a cello, and she was wrapped in gauze. Okay. He said, Mr. Fahey said, "I'm going to have to glue those pages together." Okay. It was absolutely fine, but back in 1968, it was not fine. So in my second career as a social studies teacher, we had moved to Richmond, Virginia. I could not understand why I had not been hired as a social studies teacher in Richmond, Virginia. It took a while. I couldn't understand it. I knew that there were jobs. It took a while for me to understand that you didn't hire a Northerner to teach social studies in Richmond, Virginia in the late 60s. The day before school started, I did get a job in a tiny little community that was 35 miles south of Richmond, Virginia. I was hired the day before. All I was told was, don't worry about it. It's a little school, and you will have 24 students. And I got directions to the school, and I was supposed to show up the next day, and that was the first day of school. Well, I got out the map, found the school on a crossroads, went, and found that it was essentially a one-room schoolhouse, except that it was sort of a cross between a motel and a trailer park with classrooms lined up. And it was a school that had 12 classrooms, and there were 12 grades. And I was hired, I thought, to teach social studies, but it really wasn't until I got there the next day that I found out that I was teaching 7th grade everything, and it was the first, I was going to have an integrated class, and it was the first class that was being integrated in this part of Virginia, and it was amazing. So I mention this because I decided that with my 12 students, of each race, that I had to do something different, and I ended up, there were no books. Except the English book. I also found out I was teaching everything. The English book they gave me was new, and it was a new textbook of transformational grammar. Okay. The social studies book was published in 1929, and there was no it was American history, but there was no chapter on the Civil War. But I did manage to get some money, and the book that I bought was To Kill a Mockingbird. And the book could not go home because I knew that would not work. So this was a book that we read together in class. And at the end of that year, I knew that I had to be a language specialist. And it is something that I just look back on those times, and I'm just so grateful for 40 years of kids. I actually checked out a student from my first year whose name was Joel Marchetti, and he drove me crazy. And at the end of that first year, he walked into class, he was graduating, and handed me a bottle of champagne and an album, bookends, Simon and Garfunkel, and something in a brown paper bag that I was afraid to open. Joel Marchetti is now retired, still living in Meriden, Connecticut. I checked him out. But I think of all my kids, I think of all kinds of ages. I think of my great colleagues over the years, the fact that I've been fortunate enough to have many experiences in different districts and libraries. But most of all, I'm going to think about this group, because the folks in this group are the ones that have meant, we all have our circles, but the folks here sing to my heart. And Tamara and Elaine this morning, and Grace, we have a new chapter, Mr. Monahan and Judy, and it's the School Library System Council of Retired LMS. So we are going to begin our meetings, I think, probably pretty soon.